I think in order to solve some of the quite massive global challenges that we're facing at the moment, I think we need all hands on deck. We can no longer do this. Everyone stays in their lane. I think everyone needs to work collectively and collaboratively. I have learned not only the importance of having a professional network, but also the importance of having that personal network and how much that counts in helping you get through those tough times.
Hello there, I'm Sarah McCluskey, and this is Research Adjacent. Each episode, I talk to amazing research-adjacent professionals about what they do and why it makes a difference. Keep listening to find out why we think the research-adjacent space is where the real magic happens. Hello there, and welcome to the Research Adjacent podcast. I'm your host, Sarah McCluskey, and after the fun of the 50th episode and a break for the holidays, normal service resumes today with episode 51 and a brand new guest. Today we're going to meet Ally Hughes, who is Project Manager for the Scottish Universities Life Science Alliance, more commonly known as SULSA. SULSA supports research collaborations between academia and industry, as well as across disciplines and countries. As you'll hear, the team at SULSA is small, so Ally has a very varied role, which recently included coordinating a partnership between Scotland and Germany. When I spoke to Ally a couple of months ago, the deal had just been signed, but I saw on LinkedIn that the German delegation visit she talks about is actually happening this week, so I imagine she is very busy right now. As well as talking about work, Ally also talks really honestly about some of the challenges that she's had with her mental health, including feeling like a failure when she dropped out of her first PhD and the anticlimax of finally finishing her PhD but during COVID. As Ally says herself, she's learned the importance of both personal and professional support during tough times. So listen on to hear Ally's story. Welcome along to the podcast, Ally. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Lovely to see you here. So I wonder if we could begin by hearing a little bit about what it is that you do.
Yeah. So my role at the minute is project coordinator with the Scottish Universities Life Sciences Alliance. We were one of a series of pools that were set up across STEM disciplines in Scotland to support research collaboration and support researcher development. So that's the role that I have at the minute. Although it's titled as project manager, because we're part of a small dynamic team, there's quite a lot of hat swapping that goes on. So within that, I kind of lead our international activity and kind of partnership building in that area, and then also some of our industry engagement work as well.
Excellent, thank you. So when you say it's a small team, how many people are there? I know it's sometimes hard to say when people work part-time and things like that.
No, we're 3 full-time staff members, and 2/3 of that team is called Ally. So we really are a small team. We are hoping to expand this year to bring on some additional support, but for the most part, it is our director, Ali McIntosh, myself as project manager, and then Jill Inkster as our operations officer.
Fantastic. Oh yeah, definitely. If you're in a team that small, I imagine at times it's just all hands on deck. Just do what you need to get done.
Absolutely. Yeah. Whatever needs to be done gets done, and whoever has a free hand or a spare brain cell to do it, that's how it works.
And is that something you like? Do you like being in a small team or the variety of it?
I really love the variety, and I think that even though I've been in the role for a short time, so I started in October 2021, fresh after finishing my PhD. So even though I've been in it for a short amount of time, I feel like I've had so many learning and development opportunities because there's been so many different areas where I've kind of tagged in or supported or taken lead. So that's been really fun. I mean, it also means that it's a lot of new learning every day. So that can be a little bit overwhelming at times, but generally speaking, I really enjoy it. I love the variety of it, and I love the variety of people that I get to work with as a result of that as well.
Yeah, so you're saying that in terms of the variety of the kind of things you do and the people that you work with, project manager is one of those job titles that could cover just about anything. So what does your day-to-day role involve?
Yeah, so most days are quite different. I would say the only thing that is consistent in my life is that there are emails in my inbox that I don't feel like I have enough time to respond to. So there is quite a lot of correspondence in that sense, and quite a lot of communications across different stakeholders. We're an alliance of universities, so we have 13 members. So we have 12 universities and a research institute in Scotland. So having clear communication between each of those partners and making sure that we have the right contacts in each university is quite a big part of that. And then in terms of actual, I guess, kind of projects, I manage our early career committee. So that's made up of PhD students, postdoctoral researchers, and early stage principal investigators from across the life sciences in our members. So I manage that committee. I also manage our social media. So that's another kind of realm to the communications that I've been trying to lead on. And then our international activity, primarily working with the Rheinland-Pfalz ministry in Germany. So we've got quite a big body of work with them. We've just had a really exciting cooperation agreement signed last week for that work. But that includes a delegation visit to Scotland, having the ministry come to visit. Having a delegation visit to Germany, having the ministry come and visit us in Scotland. So organising the activities around that and the agenda for that. We had an international conference this year for early career researchers held online. So I did quite a lot of the organising for that. And then we've got another delegation. This is work that we're doing with kind of the German research funding agency. We've been chosen as their European pilot country for supporting universities of applied sciences and networking. So that's another delegation visit that will happen in September. And so I'm helping to coordinate the agenda for that. And then in terms of our industry engagement, we have an annual conference, which is all around industry academia collaboration. So I very much just play a periphery supporting role in that and helping on the day. And then we've got our Forging Futures, which is another training program we do for PhD students and postdoctoral researchers. And that is looking at just building their confidence, their training, and their network for engaging with industry, whether that's for transitioning into a job in industry, whether that's maybe setting up some research collaborations with industry.
So it really does sound like you're doing a huge variety of different things then in your role. So tell us a bit about, I mean, I'm kind of picking up a bit on it, I think, but what actually... So you use the acronym SULSA, don't you? Scottish Universities Life Sciences Association, is that right?
Alliance, yeah.
Alliance, yeah. But use the acronym SULSA. So what does SULSA exist for? What's its aim? What are all these activities building?
Yeah. So within SULSA, we describe ourselves as the gateway into the active and vibrant life sciences community here in Scotland. I would say that we kind of have two levels at which we operate. So the first one is that kind of grassroots level. So we do quite a lot of work in the researcher development space. We have training events, networking events, and small pots of funding that we use to help researchers, so from PhD students upwards, to support them in their career development, and whether that be within academia or out with academia. And then on the other level is kind of the more strategic level that we work at. And so that's where we're working with the likes of the ministry in Germany. We work with Scottish government, industry leadership groups, and really just try to act as a collective voice on behalf of life sciences in Scotland, on behalf of our universities in Scotland, and to try and bring more opportunity to those researchers. So kind of lobby on their behalf and scope for opportunities that we can bring back to them.
And is this because life sciences is seen as a particularly important area for Scotland, or do similar organisations exist?
Yeah, so the research pools were set up by the Scottish Funding Council, I think about 15 years ago now. And there's 9 of us, as far as I can remember, working across various different STEM disciplines. And so, yeah, I've focused with life sciences, but there's one for energy, engineering, chemistry, physics, computing science, and medical imaging. So they kind of were brought into key STEM areas, all with a similar remit of trying to bring academia together and sort of have that sort of collective mind, that collaborative attitude towards research. And then ours, we're no longer funded by the Scottish Funding Council now. So SULSA have moved into a fully university-owned model. So each of our universities pay a subscription fee. And so that's what kind of funds our core activity. And then we go scoping for other funding so that we can enhance or expand the activity that we run and give back. And then some of the other research pools from that transition, some of them are funded a little bit differently now. So some of them have partnerships with industry, and so that funds what they're doing, or they do a lot more kind of consultation type work that keeps them funded. So now we operate, I think, a little bit differently, but still under this massive umbrella called Research Innovation Scotland, which also includes the innovation centres in Scotland, and they're more industry facing. So we kind of have our academic research pools and our industry facing innovation centres, and we all are kind of working somewhat harmoniously towards supporting research and innovation in Scotland. But I would say that life sciences is a really key area. I think there's about 40,000 jobs in Scotland in the life sciences sector. We've got about 700 companies, a lot of those being spin out and startup companies. So it's a really vibrant ecosystem here.
Yeah, certainly a lot going on, it sounds like. So I'm picking up the fact that despite being based in Scotland, you don't sound like you're originally from Scotland, as somebody who is originally from Scotland. Tell us about your journey to how you've ended up in Scotland, how you've ended up in this role. What's your path been?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a little bit disappointed. This is my best Ouija accent. So I grew up in Ireland. I'm from a small enough town called Tullamore in the Midlands, home of the famous Tullamore Dew whiskey. So I still have that running strong between my two homes. I did a general sciences degree at what is now called the University of Galway. It was the National Universities of Ireland in Galway when I was attending it. And so in that, I kind of specialised in chemistry. So I'm not even a life scientist by trade, really. I've kind of come in under cloak and dagger. But yeah, so my background training was in chemistry. I did do some biochemistry as part of my degree, and a semester of physiology. So I pretend like that counts, but I remember very little of it now. And then I actually started a PhD in the States. So I went to the University of South Florida and joined the graduate program there to do a PhD in marine natural products drug discovery. So that's just looking for new potential medicines from various marine organisms, including little Antarctic sea slugs. And I really, really struggled during that time. I found it very difficult to be in Florida, being away from my home, and kind of the hierarchical system there was very competitive. So I really struggled. And so I left that program and was very lucky actually to secure another PhD position at the University of Strathclyde. So with that, doing similar work, but with a different slant. So also looking for medicines, specifically antibiotics, this time from marine microalgae from Scottish waters. So it was kind of a marine biotechnology PhD, and more in that sense. And that was through the Industrial Biotechnology Innovation Centre, which is one of the innovation centres I mentioned before. So it was their PhD program, which meant that I had an industry placement built into my PhD program. And so I think that really allowed me to get a very broad view of what was going on in research and a little bit in the innovation field as well. And as a PhD student, I got involved in SULSA actually as one of their early career researcher reps. So that's kind of how I got involved in this in the first place, and started to become interested and started thinking that maybe there was a life for me outside of research that I wasn't really willing to look at before the pandemic. So I finished my PhD during the pandemic, and
goodness me.
Like most people, did quite a lot of soul searching during that period of time. It's one thing when you're stuck looking at your four walls writing a thesis. It's another thing when you're stuck looking at those four walls writing a thesis and you can't leave at the end of the day to go and even to go exercise or to go for, to meet up with some friends or whatever. So that was when I started thinking that maybe research wasn't the life that I wanted to pursue. And that was quite a difficult decision for me to come to. And I did apply for postdoctoral positions, maybe a little bit half-heartedly applied for it. And when the role came up with SULSA, I just decided to go for it. I already kind of knew the team a little bit from being there as an early career rep. And at the time it was an 8-month position. So I was like, this is great. I can join this for a few months. I'll have, maybe a paper or two to write up for my PhD. So that'll be great. It won't even look like I've gone and taken on another opportunity or that I've tested the waters outside of research. And obviously we're 2.5 years later and I'm still in this role. And so yeah, I haven't really looked back since.
Yeah. And what have you found to be the main thing that's kept you in that role? You know, as you say, it sounds like you were initially maybe thinking, oh, maybe I'll go back to the research. I'm not sure. Why have you stayed?
I would say that this probably, it fulfills, it scratches the itch for research. So I did a general sciences degree because I couldn't make up my mind what I wanted to specialize in or what subject that I really liked. I loved science very generally. I wasn't good at science very generally, but I loved science very generally. And within the work that I do with SULSA, I get to talk to researchers across a wide variety of disciplines. Like it's not just life sciences that we work with, but even within life sciences, you're talking about everything from medical sciences to plant sciences, biotechnology, environmental science. It covers a really wide range of disciplines. And then we're also working with people in engineering departments and physics and chemistry and computing science, because a lot of that interdisciplinary and cross-disciplinary work is really where there's impact kind of happening, where that really exciting stuff is happening. So I think that's what's really kept me. I mean, the variety and the learning opportunities I get are phenomenal. But I think just being able to keep that little hook into research and hearing about all of the cool stuff that's happening, but not having the responsibility of conducting it myself. Yeah, it's a nice balance.
I know what you mean. Some of what you said there, I could have almost said exactly the same thing myself. So yeah. Fantastic. Well, I'm sure, I mean, you say it's only been 2.5 years, but 2.5 years is still quite a while in one job. So I'm sure there must be some things that you've done that you're really proud of. Maybe you'd like to tell us about some.
Yeah, I think two things come to mind with that. So one of them is actually a project that we started while I was still in early career rep. There was a lot coming out, and I think a lot of attention and focus being given to the inequalities and the lack of diversity across STEM, and how this was such a systemic issue. And so I was sitting at home and I was feeling very helpless and very hopeless about it. And we had an early career researcher meeting with the SULSA committee. And so I kind of brought this up and was like, I'd really love to do something. I really think that we have the potential here to just give a voice to people. So we started the Breaking Barriers in STEM initiative. So it was ourselves and a few of the other research pools in Scotland teamed together. And we ran an online event in 2020, I think it was, October 2020, we ran an online event. And then from that, we had some working groups come out of that, looking at different areas that we could address. So looking at the leaky pipeline, looking at supporting international students, looking at mental health and well-being in postgraduate studies and research. And decolonizing the curriculum was the fourth one that we looked at. And so these working groups then went away and started doing, some additional workshops or some research and reports, and started doing some work in those areas. So that program ran for about 2 years. And then we had a wrap-up meeting of Breaking Barriers Through the Looking Glass, keeping with the theme of Alice in Wonderland that we started. And so we kind of wrapped it up then, but it was a 2-year project where I felt like we were able to give a voice to researchers that don't often get given a voice. And we were able to do it in a way that wasn't adding undue pressure to them, but just giving them the space to say what they felt like needed to be said and to have their voice heard. So that was a really important piece of work that I did. And we're still looking for avenues of how we can pick up more of that work as well and support it. I think particularly now that there's quite a big focus amongst the universities on research culture, I think that's a piece that we can pick back up again and really contribute to again. And then the other one is probably the international work that we've been doing. So I mentioned last week we were in Dundee. We had a ministry from Rhineland-Pfalz over visiting. And so we actually signed a cooperation agreement for a joint hub between Scotland and Rhineland-Pfalz. So this will allow for bilateral research exchange funding for our biennial research conference to continue. We're also going to have a research showcase in the alternate years from that, and scoping for opportunity to have a joint international PhD program. And so that's another piece. I think researchers are really struggling. We haven't had access to Horizon Europe funding, which is a huge pot of funding, access to the EU. We're no longer part of the Erasmus program, so that really stunts kind of student and researcher mobility. And I think that's really been felt, particularly among our early career researchers. So that's something that I'm really proud of, that I did quite a lot of the work on the SULSA side. I was leading that work on our side to make that happen. And so we're really excited that it's going to launch in April next year.
Yeah, fantastic. That is exciting. And does it mean that you've been able to go for some trips over to Germany as well? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I spent 6 weeks in Germany last summer. And did quite a lot of traveling during that. It was a very intensive few weeks, but it was amazing, and got a really good understanding of the research funding landscape there and the research landscape, because it's very different. The way they have their universities and institutes set up is very different. And then I've also been over to Mainz in Rhineland-Pfalz a couple of times as well.
Yeah, nice. And I think it also as well, it demonstrates something that comes up a lot on the podcast, is the amount of work that goes, it's nice to say, oh yeah, let's have a collaboration with, another university, another country, whatever it is. But there's actually a lot of work goes into making that happen. The relationship building, the paperwork that's involved, all of that stuff that we don't necessarily see from the outside.
Yeah, absolutely. And even like there's the kind of physical work of, the events that we plan and the paperwork and the documents into it. But that relationship piece is just so important. I mean, I know that there's lots of people who are listening to this that are going to they have had people harping onto them about how important your network is and how important those relationships are, but they're not saying it for no reason. It is really important to build those relationships. And I think we've been really, really lucky, particularly with the work we've been doing with the DFG, with the German Research Funding Agency, and our partners in Rhineland-Pfalz, that we are all very enthusiastic, very passionate, and we're both driving it from both ends. You can find sometimes that even though the outcome of partnership might be exactly what you want, if you don't have that kind of equal push and pull on both sides, it makes it really difficult, and it really creates such a bottleneck in driving things forward. And so we've been really lucky to have really, really strong partners on that side that are equally as enthusiastic as us, that want the same kind of things from this venture. And so it's been a joy working with them, to be honest.
Oh, fantastic. That sounds brilliant. So I'm sure that although these things are things that have gone very well, there are some things that have been a little bit more tricky. What have been the biggest challenges that you've faced?
So I think throughout all of my time, from kind of being an undergraduate through my first attempt at a PhD, and then my second more successful attempt at a PhD, and now into the working world, is my mental health. I've suffered with that quite a lot. I tend to get very anxious. Imposter syndrome plays a big role in my life. And so I've really struggled with that. And at times to the point where I've sought counselling and therapy in order to be able to help deal with those. And I think from that, I have learned not only the importance of having a professional network, but also the importance of having that personal network, and how much that counts in helping you get through those tough times. I've had incredible mentors that have helped me through it, an incredible group of friends that are both in science and in STEM and in academia, so they understand the specific pressures of doing a PhD or preparing for a conference talk that you're terrified of giving. They kind of understand those specifics, but then also having my group of friends from home who've been phenomenal at just reminding me of who I am a little bit as well. I think it's a very competitive field, research can be, and I think we put there's a lot of external pressures, but I think because of the nature of what we do as researchers, or those who are supporting research, I think we also have a lot of internal pressure. I think we put a lot on ourselves to deliver things. We see where the challenges are and we want to fix everything for everyone all of the time. And it can become really overwhelming. And so I think it's really important to look after your mental health first and foremost. And if you do need help, reach out to whatever avenues you need to in order to get that help. But then also use that network and use the people around you that just kind of bring you back down to center a little bit as well.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for talking about that, because I think it is something. Loads of people I've talked to have challenges with imposter experiences. Loads of people that I talk to have had those. I mean, blimey, doing a PhD, I don't know if there's anybody gets through a PhD like fully without any kind of instance.
Yeah,
certainly middle
definitely. Sorry, I was going to say from that first experience of attempting the PhD in Florida, I then kind of already went into starting the PhD in Strathclyde thinking I was a failure, like not being sure if I was cut out for it. So there was those sort of extra doubts that were put in there around whether I'm cut out to be a researcher and whether I'm cut out to do a PhD. And so I think that's a huge struggle that people face, is just not knowing if they're good enough. And it's really the first time in your life that you don't have a grade, unless you've gone away and worked before coming in to do a PhD. But if you've gone straight through as a student, it's the first time that you don't have a letter or a number to define how well you're doing. And that was just like, I never knew that I needed that, or I relied on that so much for that kind of security of having a grade. And I'm not saying that I was an A grade student or anything like that, but I at least knew where I stood. Yeah. Whereas when you go into PhD and you go into the working field, you don't have that. You have your reviews and stuff, but you don't have that kind of number or that grade to rely on to know how well you're doing. I find that so challenging.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I found as well the unstructured part of it really difficult as well. The way it was like, yeah, you've got 3 years, I'm like, what? There's no deadlines. There's no reports or assignments or things I have to do in between. Yeah, that's really hard as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people refer to a PhD as a marathon. And so I was like, cool, so I need to be productive every single day for the next 3 years in order to do it. But I think it's more like sprint intervals where you have those periods of productivity and periods of things that do happen and do click and you do start getting some results. And then you're going to have those periods where you're just waiting for things to kind of click up again and to get that boost of motivation and productivity.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I think that, you must have been as well, even with that history that you came to it with, finishing up your PhD during COVID I just can't even imagine. Yeah.
I'm not sure it's really, it felt a bit surreal and it felt a little bit anticlimactic at the time. I'm not going to lie, but I think that was just the nature of how things were at that time. I was really lucky that I was able to kind of celebrate when I did my Viva. I did have a big blowout party. I was like, just in case, I might not ever get married, and I'm not sure if having kids is in my plan. So this might be the big bash of my life is passing this PhD. So I went all out and had a big massive party for it, and I was lucky to be able to do that. But it was a bit of a surreal kind of anticlimactic feeling of like, I've done all this work and I've done everything, and it's almost the journey is really the thing, right? It's not the piece of paper at the end of it. It really is the journey and everything that you learn, both technically and about yourself and about kind of those transferable skills. It's really that journey that is the kind of the important part and the achievement. It was a little bit weird. Yeah. When I got the piece of paper, it felt a little bit disappointing almost. But I think that was just the nature of the time that we were in. Everything.
Yeah. It's fantastic that you're now able to look back on it and see that it was the journey that was important and make sense of it. And also, any excuse for party. So I'm with you on that one. Yeah. Excellent. Oh, well, I do like to ask all my guests, I think, if they had a magic wand, what they would change about the world that they work in. So what do you want to use your magic wand for?
I've thought about this a lot. And I think at one point I had a list of about 15 things that I want to change. And it's not that I think I love the area that I work in, and I think that there is great people and great things happening. But I think that there is also quite a lot of systemic flaws that if we were able to change would be amazing. I think the one thing that I'm going to say, and I think it's been echoed by a few other people that have worked in similar space that have been on the podcast, is just removing some of that rigidity. And just making things a little bit more fluid. I'm really lucky in my role that I get to work with researchers, researcher development, innovation specialists, industry, so many different people, policymakers and government. I get to work with so many different people. And from that, I've learned so many different things and about how all of these different sectors operate and what their kind of language is and what are the things that are important to them. And so I would love to see careers just being a little bit more fluid, where we have lots more secondments in different areas, where we have lots more blending between industry and academia, where going away and working in industry or working in policy and then coming back to an academic research, that's much more widely, not only more widely accepted, but is happening more widely, that is actually physically happening more widely. Because I think in order to solve some of the quite massive global challenges that we're facing at the moment, I think we need all hands on deck. And so I think that, we can no longer do this, everyone stays in their lane. I think everyone needs to work collectively and collaboratively to solve those challenges. And so I'd love to see more fluidity happening across disciplines and across sectors. I think that would be really exciting to see. I think it would be a great professional development opportunity for individuals. And I think it might actually get us to where we need to get in terms of driving innovation forward and having that real life impact.
That sounds like an absolutely excellent plan to me. Yes, brilliant. Well, I think it just remains to give you an opportunity to tell us if anybody wants to find out more about you, more about the work that you do. Where's the best place to find out about you, find out about SULSA?
Yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm at Ally Hughes. There's probably a few of us. I think my cover photo, I've got short blue hair, if that helps anybody finding me. And then I would definitely recommend, we do quite a lot in the space of career development and supporting researchers. So it kind of ties in a little bit with the theme of your podcast. So I'd highly recommend people to go to sulsa.ac.uk and have a look at our website for different funding opportunities we have, but also some of the events and training that we have coming up as well. We're on LinkedIn as SULSA, we're on Twitter at SULSA Tweets, and we are on Instagram at SULSA Scott, but probably the most up-to-date place is the website, and sign on for our mailing list.
Fantastic. I'll get all those links in the show notes as well, so anybody can find them there. So thank you so much for coming along and sharing your story and being so honest and just telling us all about what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I was really excited. I love this podcast, so I was really excited to contribute to it.
Thanks for listening to Research Adjacent. If you're listening in a podcast app, please check you're subscribed and then use the links in the episode description to find full show notes and to follow the podcast on LinkedIn or Instagram. You can also find all the links and other episodes at www.researchadjacent.com. Research Adjacent is presented and produced by Sarah McCluskey, and the theme music is by Lemon Music Studios on Pixabay. And you, yes you, get a big gold star for listening right to the end. See you next time.